Good afternoon again. We're moving on to the next presentation. In this case, we have a roundtable on the uses of AI in medical delivery or healthcare services. My name is Pedro Fontes, so those of you who weren't here a couple of minutes ago, I'm a managing associate at VDA's Life Sciences practice, and I'll be chairing the discussion. With me, I have some, fortunately, very qualified professionals to discuss this, which I will introduce very shortly. Firstly, we have Carolina Brich, who is a regulatory affairs consultant at Compliar and specializing in software as a medical device. She has a foundation in biomedical engineering and began a career in Brussels, conducting data analysis for stroke rehabilitation exoskeletons and developing AI models for rehabilitation with smart devices at VUB University. She then transitioned from academia to industry and joined SGS in 2022, where she led global teams and managed compliance and audits for the medical devices regulation, the MDD, and ISO 13485. She recently completed a postgraduate course with TU Dublin University focusing on implementing regulatory requirements for medical devices. We also have with us João Frutuoso, who is an internal medicine doctor working in critical care at Unidade Local de Saúde Lisboa Ocidental, Hospital São Francisco Xavier. He holds postgraduate degrees in quality control management from Católica do Porto and in healthcare management from Nova School of Business and Economics. Additionally, he completed an AI for healthcare programs at Stanford Medical School and MIT, as well as a data science with RN Healthcare at Escola Nacional de Saúde Pública. On my far left, your far right, we have Josué Delgado. He's a cybersecurity professional with over 15 years of experience, and he leads enterprise information security and governance with the focus on safeguarding information assets while driving digital transformation and innovation. Currently, Josué serves as a Chief Information Security Officer at Luzia da Saúde and is a board member at the ISAC Lisbon chapter. Finally, on my right, I have Nuno André da Silva, who is the Deputy Director at Hospital de Learning Health, Luxud. Nuno has a background in biomedical engineering, holds a PhD in engineering from RWTH Aachen University and an MBA from the Lisbon NVA. He has worked in the area of quantitative molecular brain imaging using advanced analytics at the Forschungszentrum Jülich from the Helmholtz Association. And he is now responsible for leading the innovation and data science areas in Luxud. Welcome, everyone. Apologies for the long introduction, but these are very impressive resumes, and it's imperative that I introduce you properly. So, to kick off the discussion, I would like to ask Nuno what seemed to him the most promising uses of AI in the provision of healthcare services.
So thank you very much for the introduction, for the kind introduction, and hello everybody. So before we think about what are the most promising areas where AI can transform healthcare, I think when we're talking about AI and healthcare, we need to think about who are the main stakeholders involved in this ecosystem. So we are talking about patients, we are talking about providers, we are talking about payers, and we are talking about regulators. So when we apply AI under this ecosystem, we need to think about each one of these players and how they're going to be affected by AI. So from our perspective at Luxud, we see AI as a transformative technology that can power healthcare to be more human. To be more human at different levels. So we can have, for instance, if you look for the medical domain, we can have better diagnosis, as we have seen in the previous presentation, where we could use MRI from prostate cancer to identify lesions, to classify and to try to understand the prognosis of the diseases. Or you can also have a lung screening app that will tell you how many nodules you have in the lungs. That would be helpful for the radiologist. Can also improve the access to health. From the other side, we also have to look not only from the providing care, but how the operation of the hospital works. So it's not just about having the better diagnostic, but is the better diagnostic at the right time for the right person. So AI also has a huge impact in the way that healthcare is provided, and how can he improve the journeys of the patients over the time. And if you look, for example, on the way as the VCs are putting money, so there was a report recently from the Silicon Valley Venture Capital Bank, 60% of the investment in AI were in care journeys. It was not in getting the better diagnostics, it was in the care journey. How can we improve the care journey of our patients? And that's something that can be transformed using AI. So, for example, we can think about a consultation where we go to a physician and we have an assistant listening to our consultation and doing a summary of our conversation with our physician. This transforms completely the way that healthcare is provided. So the physician will not have to type, will just talk with you, and you can get information out of it. So that's an example of things that can be done with AI and can be used to transform healthcare. On the other side, at Luchaud, we like to look at AI always from the perspective of the responsible AI view, what to say. So we know that we are at early stage of this technology. Yeah, of course, historically, AI started early on. There were some winters of AI. But nowadays, when the algorithms are more available, computational resources are cheaper, you can apply it more. We are really at early stages. So if you want to apply AI in healthcare, we always need to consider the risks. Of course, there's bias on the algorithms, data concerns, and at Luchaud, we try to look at this as always from the responsible AI perspective, also considering explainability. For example, so in my team, where we developed some of these models, we also use this SHAP technology that was shown before to try to explain why this decision was taken. And that's something which is very important to increase transparency and also to use it in the clinical workflow in the future.
Thank you very much, Nuno. I was wondering, I mean, of course, these are very valid concerns and that make perfect sense, but while very valid, they're also abstract. And I was wondering if there was a practical example that we could hold on to. And I understand, after talking with Josué, that you have employed an AI-powered digital assistant. Do you mind describing that case? I'll bring you.
So thank you for the invitation. When we start looking of use cases at Luzia da Saúde, one of the most common use cases is digital assistants. Some enterprises start looking at AI for improving process, improving response, interacting with customers and patients. And the digital assistant, we start looking at it as a way of improvement. And the chatbot, it's the face of a digital assistant for a consumer perspective when we engage. When we start looking at it and we start developing the project and the program, several questions started appearing. One of those is which data we are going to train the model. So which data? And we start looking of it in a very critical way. We have the permission to use the data. We are going to train the model with the data. Is the data enough protected? How is the overall systems architecture and the protection that we are going to put on the systems itself. And all these questions began to put us to think. At the time, I think it was 4 years ago when we started the project. The Gen AI was not a big issue at the moment, but we had the notion that if we need to put this for the use of the client, we will need to give them value and trust and transparency of the model. So at the very beginning, we started talking with the innovation team and the compliance team, and the chatbot comes to life. And now we have some use cases, for example, automated scheduling, automated response. And when the Gen AI comes, we start looking at what use case that we can improve the model. For example, it can have some sort of supervised learning on data sets, so it can answer some questions to professionals, professionals that engage with customers, because the chatbot itself can be very autonomous, but we decided to have it more controlled. So if we need to reply to customers on some questions that are not trained and not supervised, we have that possibility and that autonomy. And this goes back to the initial question. Do we have the model protected, and we trust the model and the questions that the model are going to respond? This was the main use case that we had for our digital assistant at that time. Other use case, I talk it's outbound communications. We can have outbound communications for the customer itself, and web and voice messaging. So this is our main use case on the chatbot.
Thank you, Josué. So these AI tools, they assist in the detection or treatment or diagnostic of diseases. So they are qualified as medical devices. So I was wondering if these concerns that were discussed by Josué and Nuno, how are they addressed when the technologies are being developed, and how are these concerns handled before these technologies come into the market? So I'd ask Carolina to give us our thoughts on the regulatory landscape in Europe and what are its current challenges and what is its current focus as well.
Thank you, Pedro. So as we heard, artificial intelligence in healthcare is undergoing rapid development, and we have companies innovating in diagnostic, in therapeutic recommendations, and even specialized medicine. If we look into a regulatory point of view in Europe, the framework is trying to keep up with these advancements. So just now, one key element was released in the beginning of August, was the EU AI Act, so the European Union AI Act, which is the first very regulation to do a comprehensive approach to AI and try to regulate these new systems that are appearing. And basically, this regulation is trying to divide the AI systems in risk categories, and medical devices are going to fall in the higher risk category, which means that we'll have stricter oversight in these devices. And why are we doing that? Just to keep the patient safe and to ensure that the models are robust, are reliable, and transparent. This is like the key for AM models. Not talking just about the EU AI Act, we also have EU MDR, that probably you are more familiar with, which is the European Union Medical Regulation. And we have also GDPR, which probably you are super familiar with, which is the General Data Protection Regulation. And for companies, especially for small companies, these can be super overwhelming to try to adhere to all these regulations, all these standards. And so at Complear, what we do is that we help these clients not just to adhere to these 3 main regulations, but also to hundreds of technical standards that are needed to develop AI models. And if you are developing these systems, you know that it's very complicated to try to follow all these standards, all these regulatory standards. So for me, this is the biggest challenge, is how to develop a model while adhering to all these standards. Because in one side, we need to make sure that our model is not a source of bias, errors, or cybersecurity vulnerabilities. And on the other side, we need to think about clinical evaluation, post-market surveillance, risk management, which can be very complicated if we don't have an in-house team 100% focused on this task. So to wrap up, I would go again to data privacy, because the GDPR is a very strong framework, but it raises concerns when we talk about access to large data sets that are needed to train AI models. And so at this moment, Europe is trying to find the balance between protecting patient data and developing AI systems that need extremely large amounts of data.
Thank you very much, Carolina. Very interesting reply. Now trying to look into the other side of the provision of services, doctors. So, João, as a doctor, how do you feel that this technology can impact the provision of services, and how has it indeed started to impact such services?
I believe that it should be considered only a tool, because in the end, the one who is going to make the decision will always be the physician. AI has its flaws. AI is susceptible to bias, as is shown several times, and it can make mistakes. It also needs data complied with past evidence. If there is new evidence and new improvements in quality of care or a new drug, the data will be outdated. So in that way, we always will need human. Even though to err is human, we have to live with that. Another thing is that nowadays we are using it more and more and more. And it's important to have the transparency, and even though black box models are usually more accurate, we need to see what we are basing our decisions on, because sometimes it makes no sense. I cannot see if it's a cause or it's an effect of my decision. And in that way, we surely need multidisciplinary teams, because if I'm a doctor, I might study a lot of a topic or in data science or regulatory affairs. I will never be a lawyer or a data scientist. But in the same way, a data scientist will never be. It might do the med school, but in a sense, it will not be a data scientist, will not be a physician or a regulatory expert. So we need to create teams with several people, with several knowledge. And I don't say that the knowledge would be in a silo, but we should share knowledge. And that thing is the thing that I think that must change in our approach to AI. To expand ourselves beyond our borders and expand our knowledge. Because in the end, we are always trying to do the best for our patients, and lose our egos is a very important thing to do.
Thank you very much. Well, I would like to now address a question for all of you. So we've discussed how to set up these models and how to plan for them, and what are the challenges associated to their development and their implementation. But I'd like to ask, what steps do you think that are necessary? What sort of thing do you want to ensure to make to ensure that these teams your teams can use these tools for the benefit of patients? And I'd start with Nuno.
I can use this one, it's fine. Yeah, so from our perspective, what we think is needed to use the models, we can divide this in several parts, but let's say that we want to build an environment, a safe environment, where people can try those models because it's something new, so it's not regulated yet. So we need to try them, so people need to be comfortable with it and try them. João mentioned that we need multidisciplinary teams. I totally agree with him. We also need different players, not just hospitals, physicians, startups, people from the universities. And for this, we need to build an ecosystem around the companies and contribute to the innovation ecosystem. And what we are doing at Lucia Wood, so we build a test bed, which is basically infrastructure that allow innovators to try their ideas. So we have a way that we have a small data lake where you can use data to develop models. We have a simulation center where you can simulate a real-world scenario and try these in a real-world settings. And then we have our hospitals where you can try them with the patients and with the physicians. So one thing is to give the environment so people can try and they are comfortable with it. That's key. And the other thing is about training of people. So if people is afraid of using AI, they will not change. So what we are doing at Lucia Wood, we have already 5 editions of a course with Técnico, with the Instituto Superior Técnico, where we somehow try to simplify and to give the main content of the AI, the language, so it's also easy to communicate between physicians, managers, and innovators. That's, from our perspective, 2 very important things to make it happen.
Thank you very much, Nuno. I'll set the stage for Josué to reply to the same question.
So I would see this from a perspective of protection and cyber protection in order to enable the business and don't be disrupted. We discussed it earlier. I think we discussed it earlier about the technological dependency. When we are deploying artificial intelligence and these kind of new tools, there is a set of new attacks and new attack vectors and new risks that we need to take in consideration. And one of those attack vectors can be as simple as this: how the model is trained. Is the model subject to be influenced outside? So if this is possible, we might have a problem on disruption. And this is a problem for the availability of the solution, and we are talking about medical solution. And other things that I would like to highlight in terms of protection, this is interesting because each of us is giving a different perspective on this side, is regarding the data itself. I talked before, so we need to ask where the data is coming from. So where is the data is coming from? Is from live system? Is anonymized or not anonymized? Which data set are we using? Which usage that we are going to give this data inside the models and on the outputs of the model? And in the end, who is the provider of the model? Are we developing it internally? These questions, we discussed it a lot in the cybersecurity for supply chain. How we are acquiring technical solutions, we need some sort of trust in their process of developing, training the models, and ensure that what we put at clinical and physician's hand is trustable. Is trustable. So there is a lot of new attack vectors and these new risks that we are paying attention, and that could put in cause the models and the AI itself, the business side.
Sorry. Thank you very much, Josué. Now, I would make the same question to Carolina, but this is more about the product. So what type of concerns do you have within each product? Which are the practices you have within the product to make sure that it is not only compliant, but is serviceable and useful for patients?
Thank you. So I would go more on the good machine learning practices for the products, starting with the intended use of the model. So it's very important to have a clearly defined intended use and understood. And this intended use needs to be aligned with our clinical needs and with our patient population, because we need to make sure that it's going to perform well in the real life, not just on our computer. And for me, the most critical part is the data, just like as you were mentioning, because the data needs to have quality and needs to represent our population, what we are studying. So we cannot just test our model in random people if we have a specific group that our model is going to act. Again, the data, we need to have in mind that we cannot use the same data to train and test the model. So again, very important. May seem basic, but I can guarantee that some people are not paying attention to this. And so having two sets of data, one to train, one to test, is crucial if we want our model to be able to perform, to generalize, so to be able to perform in new data and unseen data. And to do this, you also need to test your model in clinical relevant settings. For that, we have test beds, just like Nuno was saying. We are also part of a test bed together with Lusíadas, Santa Maria, and the Hospital de Coimbra. And there you are able to develop your AI model to train and test in real-world healthcare settings to make sure that your model performs well and that it's safe to put in clinical practice. Even after your model is deployed, you need to keep up evaluating the model and see if it's performing well or not, because Nuno was also mentioning this. We need to make sure that our model is safe and it's not underperforming. It's very crucial. My last point would be the usability, because as we said, this is a multidisciplinary team. So the development team needs to be aligned with the healthcare team that is going to use the model. And for that, we need to have in mind the clinical workflows that they follow. And we need to understand that we are developing the model for someone to use it. So how are they using it? What do they need? This is very crucial. And we already have several groups working in this part. One of them that we are part of is the Coalition for Health AI, that is basically having working groups to discuss assessment labs for health AI together with several companies like Google. And we are really addressing this problem. So how can we join multidisciplinary teams to see good practice for developing AI and try to keep it simple but safe and compliant with the regulation? That's it.
Many thanks, Carolina. So now, João, as a user of a potential user of AI tools and as a doctor, how do you see your medical decision evolving? How do you make sure that it is used for the patient's benefit?
I strongly believe that in a way it will change our way of integrating the PDCA cycle into our working life, because back then we would need to audit our data, audit our patients. Nowadays I can make a model to predict my length of stay, and if I say that if I have a very distinct expected length of stay and the length of stay of that patient, I can go in during that stay check my patient and check what is wrong and do some real and useful changes in my process even before my discharge. Other thing that we are using nowadays, we are using it to phenotyping patients and phenotyping syndromes like sepsis. We are having more and more evidence of papers showing us patterns of disease behavior, and that's an important part of keeping the from running from black box models. If we exactly see what is changing, we will do two very important things. One, I will see exactly what is causing the outcome, and in the other way, it will. Our healthcare providers will be more prone to use that model and will accept that model more easily. Another thing that is important is to seamless integration of those models and don't add more work for a person who probably has to see 20 patients in the morning and has 10 minutes to eat and then go to the other checkpoint and sometimes has another job where he has to run. So it's a very important thing is to integrate that type of work in some way that they are already using. I came from a very rich, data-rich environment, that's ICU, where and every time my patient is admitted in ICU, I'll do a SOFA, and I'll do a SAPS, and I'll do a PASH scores, where I input data, and with that data, I have predetermined scores of severe disease and mortality rates. So in a sense, I am already giving more and more data, and if I have a model that predicts outcomes based on the data input there, it won't add any more work on my daily life, and it will improve my decision. But in the end, the decision will be mine. So I will be the one who goes to court if anything goes wrong and if anything goes sour. You know, it's like and AI is based. It's like Carolina said, that our data represents our population, and sometimes. And we have those zebras in our planes that it's not only horses. So you have very specific cases that will still need human hands, and we have to be aware of that.
Many thanks, João. We are through with the questions we had for the board a little early, but are very happy to receive questions from the audience, should there be some. Yes.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you so much. Great round table. I noticed there are people coming from the private sector and the public one. And my question is, are there different challenges when you are using AI in a public hospital or in a private one? What is your take? Of course, you have the experience of your own setting, but what is your take?
Well, I think the goal of the model will always be to provide the best care to the patient. I think that will be the baseline. I guess maybe, but João can give his view on it.
I've worked, I've worked in a PPP, public-private partnership hospital before I worked in my hospital. So I can say that in public sector, there's the bureaucracy is very, very dense. So sometimes when implementing something, we have to go throughout so much steps, much more than in a public sector, because we have budget constraints, we have bureaucracy, and the compliance with all the other systems. So sometimes we can do things by ourselves, but it's always much more by ourselves. And if we try to create a group, if we try to create something, it's as so much players in the hierarchical pyramid that sometimes it's very demoralizing. So we have to try and to mimic what anyone is already doing, wait a bit, mimic, and then do again. So it's different, but it's challenges are always fun.
That was my feeling. Of course, I don't have the experience you have. I'm sorry, just I need to repeat because this is being recorded. That was my feeling. That was going to be much more bureaucratic in the public sector. But then again, I'm not a doctor and I don't work in those settings. Thank you.
Do we have any more questions? Well, I'll start with one question, which has been making me a little curious. So Josué was talking about technological dependency, and how much is that a concern? The more and more tasks are getting automated, and people become less apt at performing those tasks, say, as knowing certain aspects of the medical profession by heart, or performing other tasks which are helpful to help memorize important aspects of the profession. What specific challenges are associated to that technological dependency, and how are you addressing them?
It works.
Sí.
Okay, I think it's working. So when we start looking at artificial intelligence, we can see it as a tool. Like João described it, at the end it's a tool. So if we see that it's a tool that will enable a professional to be more productive, and is a tool that we will include in our process life cycle, we will need to look at this tool as a critical piece that if in case of disruption, it will affect the business. And if we look at these tools based on artificial intelligence, and I talked a little before, what can disrupt this tool? We are not looking the same way we look at imaging systems, for example, because imaging systems is a closed system only available at the hospital. We can start looking on external factors, on the use of the application, if the data is accurate, the outcome that we expect from the tool itself. And I think basically, I don't like to think of artificial intelligence like an alien thing. At the end, it will be a tool. It will be systems that we will use. We will have new kind of risk, new kind of process, but it will be almost the same in terms of process of security, compliance, risk, and managing, and the end. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Can I-
Carolina, sure.
Sorry, just to add a point, because it's the first time that I'm working in a company, in Compliar, that really wants us to use these technologies. And at first I was a bit skeptic about it. For example, ChatGPT, everybody knows ChatGPT, and sometimes it gives wrong information, and it's a bit strange how to deal with it. And our CEO told us, no, I want you to use ChatGPT, but use it on a good way. So if you need to write an email, don't lose 1 hour thinking what you are going to write. Ask ChatGPT, correct what you need to correct, and you have time for other clients. And so it's just a way of managing the time and managing your effort and what you want, where you want to use your effort. And so if physicians are using AI tools to help recording the, how is it called? The appointments. Thank you. I'm not a doctor. The appointments, they can have more time to talk and to understand really what hurts the patients. And so for me, it's not about the AI tool, is how you use it and if you understand the best way of using the tool.
Many thanks. Many thanks, Carolina. Many thanks, Josué. Do we have more questions from the audience?
So, if I can ask this question, let's say in other areas in healthcare, you have devices, for example. You have, I understand that if you make a blood test and you use a device to get the results, you trust the results of this device because somebody has certified that this device generates correct results. So suppose we're starting to use these AI tools in the health care environment. What would be an appropriate process to certify these tools?
Thank you for your question. I think that probably Carolina, probably the most indicated person to reply, but...
So as I was saying in one of the questions, we need to monitor the device. We have post-market surveillance to understand how the device is performing, if it's still safe to be on the market or not. And of course, that if the device is on the market, it's because it was certified for it and all the tests were okay and there's no big risk on being on the market. And people also make mistakes. So we also have people that perform better than other, and sometimes we have problems in surgery, some deaths. So in the notified bodies, we are always receiving vigilance cases and problems with devices, with AI and without AI. And then we need to look at the problem. What's the cause of the problem? Should we take the device out of the market? Do we need to change anything on the device to be able to keep it on the market? So it's really a case by case. But of course, that if it's on the market, we need to trust that the device will perform well because it was designed for it, it was tested for it. But then, of course, it's post-market surveillance, it's vigilance, and we need always to pay attention to the device.
Thank you. Please, João.
And besides, if there is a product on the market like a blood test, most of the times we have to check if it's compliant with previous analysis. So even because sometimes even those machines give us mistakes, and even clinical guidelines that indicate us what should we do in each patient are proven to failure and they are made by several studies, several clinical evidence, and they are made by the most respected, the most clinical approved people, and they usually have phrases like, "But in the end, the clinical should decide." And we still make clinical appointments. If we deem that clinical guidelines were absolute, we shouldn't need clinical appointments to check up if my patient was okay. Because if it's that, I will have these results. So everything is bound to failure.
Yes, and I may add. From my experience that it's about what the device sets out or intends to do. So if it sets out to do an approximation, something that is meant to assist you, but is not a definitive result, you can't say that a wrong result or a faulty result. It necessarily means that the device doesn't work or is faulty or needs to be removed from the market. Again, it's an assistant, just like the blood tests, just like other tools used to provide health care.
Let me just complement regarding this. Medical device, we saw a lot of hospitals being attacked on ransomware and other disruptive attacks. So we started looking at medical devices itself and how they are protected, if they are protected from, for example, interference, or if we can change data there that can put lives in risk. And with AI and medical devices, with AI capability, we are looking the same way. So if they are properly designed and properly operated in order to protect against these risks that can disrupt or maybe sometimes the device continues to operate, but we change the way the device operates. That can put in risk, for example, changing results for patients itself. Okay, but there will be new regulation coming on protection of medical devices that will taking care the AI part.
Thank you.
So based on the assumption that the current AI technology is mostly exploiting opportunistic correlations within the data and certainly not causal relationships, how would you be able to impose and to implement in a practical way the monitoring part that you just referred to when it comes to products that are already in the market?
So, if I understood well your question, you are asking how to monitor AI systems or software as a medical
I can give
device.
you an example.
Yes, please.
Let's say that I'm using currently an AI model to detect some kind of cancer, breast, prostate, whatsoever, and then the imaging vendor makes a silent update to my scanner and changes completely the data representations, sometimes not being visually detectable. That in principle may harm the very same AI model that I'm already trusting. So how the regulatory authorities can keep an eye on that and have the control?
Yes, normally we are going to assess the cases that you find. So you will find a case of your software detected a cancer in a place that there was nothing there, or it didn't detect and you have it there. And so you are going always to document everything. And that's the monitoring part. So you are going always to assess the success of your model, and also the false positives, all these cases that you are going to find yourself. So you cannot just go into the model and see what he's doing, but you can find cases where the model failed, and that's what you need to document, and we are going to assess that.
But what happens if the ground truth, or if eventually what will happen is not available because of the model itself, because you took a decision to do something else? I mean, I don't know if you are familiar with the term MLOps, machine learning operations. So these are platforms, these are systems that are already operating, not necessarily in the clinical domain. And these are platforms that can make sure that models are continuously evaluated and monitored in a continuous way, and sometimes even unsupervised. The problem, in my opinion, is the fact that most of the regulatory authorities still consider AI as a software device, which is definitely not.
Yes, at this moment it was considered just like a software as a medical device. But now in August it was released the European Union AI Act, and now we are going to start separating and having a stricter oversight. But this is something that was released just now in August, and so now we are going to start to look at it and see what we can do with AI. Because I was working in a notified body, and when we received software with AI, they were panicking. Like, okay, well, let's deal with software and let's try to hire someone to take care of the AI part, because it's something very new, and people that work in these organizations normally don't have the knowledge about AI software, and so we were looking at it as if it was a software as a medical device, and that's why we had the need to have a specific regulation to take care of AI. And it was just released now, so I hope we could have more answers in the future.
And I think it's also important that when you use an algorithm, you know that you are using for that specific kind of data. Like whatever you say that the manufacturer changed something in the scanner that changes the imaging. So if this algorithm was not meant to be used with that change, you shouldn't use it. That's also part of the, right? If you train the algorithm for one specific case, for a specific data quality, you should stick to it, because if you use it for other purpose, then if you change the input data, you might change the output also. So this continuous monitoring of data quality that you put inside of the models, I mean, banks, they do it all the time. So that's something, I think healthcare will start to do it.
Hi, I just have a comment about this, not a question really. So it seems to me that, and I agree with the person who asked before, that AI is not software. It's clearly something else, obviously. But I think it's very important to think about evaluation, benchmarking at a large scale for a medicine, which is, of course, already happening, but also to look at specific tasks. It's very much task-dependent and very much domain-dependent as well. So and there are lots of interactions in different aspects and facets when you're evaluating information and data. And there are different types of data, textual data, images, etc. So I think it's a very difficult way, but there has to be a consensus in the community, in the AI community, how we're evaluating AI methodologies, basically, and techniques. So, sorry, I just made a comment because I thought...
Maybe I can do a final comment regarding this. I think healthcare is one of the areas where we are well prepared to do it, because in healthcare they use the clinical trials to test medicines, to find these causal relations between one action and one outcome. The algorithms also need to be tested in the same way. And if we have in our minds that trials is about testing, doing experiments, the algorithms will go a very similar process. And maybe just to finish with a final comment, is that this technology is there, it will come, so we need to be ready to it. And I think the key word to use it is, instead of the roundtable calling the use of AI in medical delivery, it could be the use of responsible AI in medical delivery. How are we going to use it in a responsible way? And this will make a completely change in the way we impact patients' lives.
Yeah, there is some complementary questions that we can ask is, how is the release life cycle after being in production? For example, you talked about all the tests before. And to answer your question is, there is silent updates or not? We don't want silent updates. We don't want silent updates. So there should be a release cycle and a certification process for each release, and we want to be sure that that release and the data that were used to train that release, it's what it's supposed to do. Okay?
Like in the trials.
Like in the trials.
Yeah, like a medicine. If you do this continuous learning, that's very dangerous, because if you don't control, continuous learning. If you're learning.
A very interesting example that happened to us. So, our institution is a private institution, right? We have a small clinic. Initially, in the first couple of years, we have been training models with patients that could afford to pay out of their pockets their MRI exams. So, wealthy individuals, right? After a while, we start signing conventions with Social Security. And patients with a different economical level started visiting us. And we realized that our models were completely braked, just changing the type of patients that we are addressing. So there are so many reasons why a model may fail that it's my strong belief that you have to always keep it under a monitoring facility. Otherwise, it's impossible. Yeah.
It goes in the line of using it in a responsible way. Like this monitoring is kind of thing that you need to do it to understand the data quality you put inside of the model and monitor the outcomes. I totally agree.
Sorry, maybe as a short comment on that, I don't think it's also the difference in the background of the patients, but also the way that we collect sometimes the data from the patients. So maybe there should also be a reference on the literacy, in general, the digital literacy of everyone, and how we give and collect data. So how we also train everyone, from young children, to be also responsible patients and understand better what is happening, maybe.
Do we have additional questions or comments? Please.
My question is specifically for Carolina, picking up on something you said. You were talking about the importance of data and the data sets for the training models and the testing models, and how data has to be specific considering the purpose of the training medical device or whatever you're trying to train. Naturally, in the hospital context, this data is already at home. So what are the main difficulties that you are maybe already foreseeing or experiencing in the application of using this data, which is fundamental for training these and testing these devices, with other regimes such as the GDPR, which aims to protect this personal data that you're using in the hospital context of the provision of medical services? So what are the main difficulties that you are foreseeing?
When I was in the AI research group, that was one of our big problems, was the data. So finding the right data to train our model. Because you're not going to make your own data if you need tons of data, because it's going to take you a lot of time. And so where can you find this data that it's going to follow all the GDPR and using your model? It's very hard. We found some online databases, and we could get there the data that was fitting our model. But again, it was research, so we didn't need to comply with all the regulation to be on the market. It's not needed. But at this moment, you say that you have your data on the hospital. I would look if it's relevant to your model or not, and if not, I would not use it. Even if it's your data, if it's not relevant for your model, I would find data somewhere else. Or I would try to get a partnership with someone that has the data and has all the GDPR approval to use that data. So I understand that for you it's easier to use the data that you have on your hospital, but it should really fit the device, because you cannot train a model that it's going to be used in children with elderly people if it's the only data that you have.
I have an example of that, because I can access all the data from a point by clicking a button in my program, which is integrated with all monitoring I have of my patients. And it's very easy to get that data, but I still have to go to the ethical committee. And that is a burden, a real burden to go through, because I have to say what I want, say why I want, and why I want waiver a paper to 1,000 patients that I have. So it's impossible. So to do a model, I used a public database, Mimic3. But even that database has several errors and several mismatches. I cannot totally. It's those public databases are good, but I see them more as training databases, because there have several mistakes, because the data within that database was not congruent with the rest of the other data. So.
Yeah. And we have the case that we cannot use anonymization and pseudo-anonymization. And in those cases, we need explicit consent of the users. And that's the big issue, to have enough data to train models, because in those cases, we need a lot of data to train models. And without explicit consent, it's difficult to have it and being meaningful for the model itself.
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone. That's the end of our time. I would like to thank our speakers for their remarkable interventions. And I'd like to thank the audience for your attention and your very interesting questions. Thank you very much, everyone.